Welcome to our webinar series for KeyCast, the innovative personal finance and small business application designed to revolutionize your cash flow management. KeyCast offers a unique calendar-based view and intuitive dashboards that seamlessly integrate your forecasted transactions with actual bank activity, giving you a clear and comprehensive picture of your finances. By eliminating the hassle of mental money management and the tedious process of handling cash flow through Excel spreadsheets, KeyCast helps you to effortlessly plan for future transactions and take control of your future financial situations. Join us to explore how KeyCast can simplify your financial life and empower your business. KeyCast utilizes a methodology that is not commonly used in personal finance management, which is forecasting and cash flow management. KeyCast is accessible on your mobile device and your computer, laptop, or tablet, or for that matter, any device that has internet access. The first 30 days on KeyCast are free with no obligation. We want to make sure this is clear to everyone. You're not signing up for anything initially. You're just given 30 days to try the application out. Now, before you set up your account, we want to make sure that you understand the following concepts. By the end of this webinar, you will know how easy it is to get started on KeyCast. You will be equipped with the knowledge of how to apply forecasting techniques and understand the need for a process we call reconciliation, as well as how to navigate the reconciliation process in KeyCast to manage your personal finances. So just quick overview, we're going to go over onboarding, forecasting, and reconciliation. And with this information, you'll have the fundamental information you need to operate KeyCast and to really hone in on your personal finance goals. So initially, we're going to cover onboarding. What we want you to understand in this section is, we want you to understand login security, the importance of your phone, what accounts are in KeyCast, and then we'll explain some KeyCast calendar features and the importance of the beginning balance. Those are the items we're going to cover initially. So in order to go over these items, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go here to the desktop version of the application. Now we're using the desktop version because in the webinar scenario, it's easier for you to see what's going on in the application via the desktop versus the phone version of the app. Okay, so whenever you sign up for the app, you would just go in. We ask for 3 basic pieces of information: your name, your email address, your phone number, and we ask you to provide a username, which you'll need to remember. Okay, now once you've signed up, then you'll log in. Now when we talk about security, when you log in, the app is going to basically require your username, and for our test database, the username is webinar01, and then you'll select this get login code, and the app will always send you a random 6-digit code. That's for the security. Now the importance of your phone is because we will always send the random 6-digit code to your cell phone via text. So that's the importance of your phone. So you will always get the random 6-digit code on your phone via text. And the reason why that's important is because if you're on a desktop computer, a laptop, or a tablet, you need to have your phone handy. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna say get my login code, and I have my phone handy here, and it will send me the code as it has, and then I am going to enter it in. Okay. Now, basically,
This is the KeyCast dashboard.
I'm
You
letting
can
this
connect to a
play
bank account.
because I just want you to be aware that when you initially go into the app, there are verbal cues to help navigate you through the installation process. It's not complicated, but we just want to make you aware that you will hear verbal instructions. So it can be good to have your phone volume up when installing the app. Okay, so now we're here on the dashboard, and from here, you can either select here to add an account or select down here. And what you are doing is you will be going into a portal with a third-party company called Plaid, and Plaid actually houses all of the bank portals that allow you to get access to this information. Now, just about all the other budgeting apps use either Plaid or another company called Stripe, and we're using Plaid to help facilitate the connection between your bank and the application. So at this point here, I'll connect my bank or connect to a bank. All right. And as you can see here, there's several banks here listed in the initial screen. And just keep in mind, you can always search. You type in the name of your bank and you'll search, and it'll more than likely pull your bank up and others that are, on a window that, holds this many banks at a time. So in our test database, I'm just going to go in here through Wells, and keep in mind, this is a test database. So what we're doing now is going into a test bank portal, and we're just going to make you aware that in these portals, you're always going to need your username and password, the same username and password that you would use if you were logging into your bank's website on the internet directly. Okay, so it's that same username and password. You'd be signing in through their portal. They will normally, most of the portals ask you for some additional identifying information like your mobile number. Then they'll send a random code to that phone, and of course you'll enter it in, and that's just to verify that you are who you say you are. Okay, all right. Now at this point, notice here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 accounts, 8, 9. There are 9 accounts available for me at this bank. What we want you to understand is that in KeyCast, when you connect to a bank, you're connecting one account at that bank. So in KeyCast, one account is one account at a particular bank, not access to all of the accounts at that bank, but just one. So in order to add the other accounts at that bank, if you want them all or a snippet of 3 or 4 of them, you would repeat this process that we're going through now, which is to link an account, and you come in and you choose the account you want in the portal. And then normally just about all the banks in the portal have a terms and agreement section. You'll select that, and then it will connect. So at this point, it says continue to finish. So I'm gonna close the screen here and continue. And at this point, it has now connected your bank and pulled in some information. Okay. Now, the very next step that's required is this opening up your calendar. And what the app is going to do at this point is it's going to review some of your recent history and find recurring transactions that happen on some frequency, and it's going to load those to your calendar for you to get you started, so that you're not starting from scratch and having to load a forecast in from scratch. This way, it really gets you started, and you can kind of see how things are going to operate in KeyCast going forward. So at this point, you would select here, and it's going to review. And then here's your message. It has found some auto recurring transactions. It's going to load those to your calendar. And then after you select this close button, it's going to allow you to review the items that were selected and loaded to your calendar. Okay.
All transactions with the below icon in the top left corner.
So that is another one of those verbal cues I was referring to at the beginning. So at this point, what in the test database, what it's basically saying is, okay, we looked at your history, we found this recurring income item, and this blue check here basically just means that that item was one of the pre-selected items that has been loaded to your calendar for you. Okay. Now, what we want you to understand on this screen is that you can select this tile and you can look at the details of what was loaded. So here should be the vendor's name, the amount that was loaded for your forecast, if you will, and the category that is loaded under, the frequency that it occurs in. And remember, you can change this information, because if the app picked up that it was happening bi-weekly, maybe it should have been semi-monthly, and you can then change it if necessary. The other thing we want you to be aware of is here's the start date and here's the end date. And we want you to understand that by default, we're putting it out 5 years, because the way we've designed the app is you can see a 5-year window of information. Okay. And the reason that this is important is because we want you to be aware of it, but in this app, the 5-year window can be modified at any point in time. So what is going to happen is the app is setting up a stream of bi-weekly payments that start on May the 18th and continue out to May the 18th, 2029. And it's going to occur bi-weekly every week on the calendar accordingly. Now, you can change that stream of payments and the amounts at any point in time, which is why setting up forecasts for long periods of time is perfectly fine, because you can end the forecast, you can change the amounts, you can even change the categories and the frequency at any point in time. Okay. Now, down below here, this is the history that the application was looking at in order to come up with this reoccurring forecasted item, or this reoccurring forecasted stream of transactions. Okay. And so, like I said, you can change any of this, but in most cases, it will be exactly what you expect it to be. Now, also notice it put a check mark here after we close the screen from viewing it. You don't need it here, because the blue check means that it's already loaded to your calendar. If you leave the check mark, it will load it again. And that we're just making sure you're aware that you don't want to load it twice, because it doubles up your income, and that would be incorrect. Okay. So at this point, if you have any other income items that were not picked up by the application, you can click here and add them at your leisure. Keep in mind, you can set this end date out much further than just the current year or the next year. You can do the 5-year window, and that would be perfectly fine. Okay. All right. So after you've reviewed your income, then you can leave this section and come over here and review your expenses. Once again, if they have the blue check, they have already been loaded to your calendar. If you want to add, you can add some items here. And of course, if there's more than looks like 5 or so here, it'll let you scroll down so that you can see all of the recurring expenses that the app picked up. Exactly the same as the income side. If you click on it, it'll show you the history that it chose to come up with that estimation. And remember that when you close out of the window, you want to deselect the check, okay? So that it doesn't add it again. All right. So that basically is the onboarding process. Now we're going to go over a couple of other pieces here, but that's basically the onboarding process. Now you're up and running and can start functioning in the app. Let's go back to the outline real quick, and we're going to go over some calendar features. And we've covered login security and the importance of your phone. What are accounts in KeyCast? We've covered that. Now we're going to go over some calendar features and the beginning balance. Okay, so first thing we want you to know is how to different ways of navigating between the months and the days. So this can be selected. It'll take you to a particular year and a particular month if you want. And as you can see, there's activity running in May of 2029. Now, what we want to make sure you understand here is that it is a rolling 5 years. So as you complete a year in a month in 2024, it will add a month on the end in 2029. Okay. So very important to understand there's a 5-year window of visibility for you, which should be more than enough. And we'll also show you, this is the current day icon. This icon takes you back to today really quick. So if you've moved out several years out and you want to get back to the current month, you select that button. Of course, these arrows let you go back and forward on month, one click at a time. And also be aware that you can click and drag your mouse and it will let you scroll through the periods this way also. Okay. In addition to that, we want you to be aware of this tuning menu. It will show you, for example, reconciled balances, available balances, and forecasted balances. This available balance number will be the exact same available balance that shows at your bank. We also have some download features here. You can download the activity for the month of May into a PDF file or into an Excel spreadsheet. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is that if you change the month, that the month that you are downloading changes also. So, all right, let's go here. Let's close. Let's go to June. We'll click here, and now you can download the activity for June. And that means any transactional activity that is either happened or forecasted to happen in that month will show on your download. Okay, so it doesn't have to have happened at the bank in order for you to download that activity. Okay, important to understand. There's an icon here for reoccurring transactions. Those are reoccurring transactions that the bank is aware of, and you can select that list. And what it allows you to do is, if you find something on the list that was not forecasted for on your calendar, you can add it. Okay. And then if you ever need to recalculate a balance, it does allow you to recalculate a balance on a particular day, but this is just there as a catch-all. We have never had issues with the calculations being incorrect. The other thing you can do is access the settings menu from here also. Okay, so now that covers some basic navigation, how to get around in the calendar. It's not complicated at all. And the last thing we want to go over in the initial process, or the ease of setup, is we want to talk about the beginning balance. So in this example that we're looking at, although today is the 18th, in this example, what it's showing us here is that this user, in this test scenario, this user signed up for the app on the 13th. And the reason that I'm saying that is because this is the first balance that we see in the app. So they signed up on the 13th, connected to their bank account, and the app goes in and pulls the ending balance from the previous day from the bank. Okay. So that's very important. It pulls the previous balance from the ending day. And as you'll notice here, that balance was $1,000. And if you look here, $1,000 is the continual ending balance for each of these days, all the way up until the 18th, when we actually show some activity on the account. Now, all of this activity is forecasted activity. So we want you to understand this beginning balance won't start changing until those days in which you start showing activity on the account, and then it affects everything going forward. And when I say that, I mean everything all the way to 2029. Okay. All right. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over forecasting. Forecasting is to predict or estimate a future event. This is very similar to budgeting, but there are some slight differences that will make evident to you. Keep in mind that in this test database that we're looking at, it's already loaded a recurring biweekly income transaction or list of transactions, and it has already loaded some monthly expenditures. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how you can change those at any point in time whenever you get ready. And we're also going to we're going to create a category forecast from scratch, just to show you how to create a forecast even after, the app has preloaded some recurring items for you. Okay. So what we're going to do is go back over here to the desktop. And so as you can see right here on the 18th, here is my recurring income transaction. Okay. You see here, it goes from the 24th to 2029, 2024 to 2029, and it's $2,600 a month. All right. What we want you to be aware of is, let's just say that this upcoming payment, I happen to know that it's going to be something different. I'm already aware. I'm aware that it's going to be closer to $2,800, not $2,600. It's still income, it's still salary, it's still going to be bi-weekly, but I'm changing just this next payment. So what I do is when I come down here, I can say update, and the app gives me these choices for editing that stream of income forecasted transactions. So I only want to update the one I'm working on. So I say here, and what it does is it's going to change this one to 2,800. But when I go to next month to see the next biweekly payment, it's still 2,600, like it was set up originally. In addition to this, let's say that we're in December of 2025. We're in December, and we get a notification from our job that we're going to get a pay raise, and it'll take effect on January 10th. So I can go over here to January 10th, and my note tells me that my new pay is going to be X, and then I can try to take out taxes and 401k and other stuff, and I say, okay, my check is going to now be roughly 3,200. Now it's just my best guess. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to be 3,200. So I come down here and I say, okay, I want it to change from January 10th to the end. So I select this, it goes out there, changes all of these future payments to 3,200. So if I keep swiping, I'll see 3,200 all the way to 2029. So here's 3,200. And if I go back to January of 2025, what's nice is that if I go to December, it still says 2,600. So I have effectively edited my stream of payments that I'm forecasting for. I've edited them inside of the entire stream as I go. So I can make these changes anytime I'm aware that a change is coming. So this is very, very important. Keep that in mind. All right. So that's changing income, and changing expenses is much the same way. And if you look here, I have a forecasted monthly amount here for Verizon of $500. Now, at the beginning of the month, I got a bill in the mail or a text on my phone or some notification that my Verizon bill this month was only going to be roughly 320, not 500, which is what it had been in previous months, but it's only 320 this month. So I can come in here. Remember, I got the notification from Verizon that the bill was only going to be 320. So I come in here and I change this to 320. Oops. I change this to 320. Nothing else is changing here. And I just come down here and I say, I only want to update this one. So it updates it to 320, and all of these balances have now changed according to the fact that that's now going to be 320, not 500. Okay. So I can edit this, and I actually do just this monthly. So I have my round figures that I've forecasted for, but as I get my bills at the beginning or the middle of every month, as soon as I know what the exact amount is going to be, I go in and edit my forecast. Because in most cases, my original forecast was the high-end estimate of what I thought it might be. And so as I want to narrow down exactly how much money I'm going to have available, I put in the exact amount of the bill, and I see the effects of that change on my income. If the bill came in more, then I put it in for more, and I see the changes in my financial balances going forward, and I'm made aware of things that might be unfavorable to me up front. So this is very, very important. Okay. So that's how you change a forecast, one that's already loaded. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to put in, let's see here. I'm going to go here and add a forecast from scratch. Okay. And in doing so, I'm not going to do it as a particular vendor type transaction like my income and my Verizon bill. I'm going to do this one at the category level. So I'm going to do a weekly grocery expense. And I'm going to estimate that we spend $300 a week in my family on groceries. And I want you to be aware right here, expense and income on this type field, they're not categories. Expense just means subtractions from the account, and income means additions to the account. And I want to make this distinction. You could take some items back to the store and get a reimbursement or a refund. And when you come into the app, that refund is going to be categorized at income because it's going to add money back to your bank account. This is not the category field. This is just a plus or a minus selection. Okay. So we want to make that clear. Here, if I did a return of something and was expecting a category to be reimbursement, and therefore when I run reports and I see income is separated from reimbursements. Both of them added money back to my account, but they are distinctly different in that income is what I've earned and the reimbursement is because I returned something to the store. All right. Now, in this example, remember, I'm doing a weekly grocery expense. So I go down here and I choose groceries. Understand also that we have a pretty decent list of default categories loaded into the app. But please be aware, you can select here and add categories on demand for what you want them to be. You can also go to the settings menu and add categories en masse and deselect categories that you don't want to show up. Okay, so that's very important. You have that flexibility. Then here you will choose the frequency, and I'm choosing weekly. Understand that there are quite a few different frequency options here, but I'm choosing weekly because I expect that to occur weekly. And then I'm gonna do a start date and an end date and extend my time frame out considerably, just because I have the ability to edit it at any point in time. So at this point, I would say add, but I do want to point out something very important, an important distinguishing factor from KeyCast versus a regular budgeting app. Normally on a budgeting app, this weekly grocery expense might be considered a monthly budget, not a weekly amount. And the reason why I say that is because if we put this in, I'm gonna go on and load it at this point. What we have is at this particular point in time in my budget, I'm gonna spend $900 more this month conceivably, okay? And the important thing to remember here now, considering that we're right here on the 18th, even if I haven't spent this money already, because remember, I'm starting the app here on the 13th, but in this particular case, I'm spending an additional $900 this month. If I were to go here on the 14th and spend all $900, I would not have broken the expectation that I was going to spend $900 on groceries this month. But due to timing with my income, I would probably not have, if you look right here, I only have, after this transaction, I only have $700 left in the account up until this payday. The important thing to remember is that if I spent all $900 right now, right here on the 14th, I would still be within budget, but my balance would go negative. So the budgeting process does not allow me to see the effects of timing differences and the timing sensitivity in my personal finances. So it is important to be able to see this so that you can properly plan. So now $300 a week doesn't negatively affect me. But if I were to spend $900 right here on the 14th and not spend any more the rest of the month, I would still be negative and overdrawn right here. That would cost me money. And but I have still met the goal of the budget. So understand that this is one of the major components that KeyCast gives you that budgeting apps don't. And I would prefer to understand my timing sensitivity as it relates to income and expenses. I would want to know that upfront going forward. So this is functionality that KeyCast provides that you do not get from a budgeting app. Now, I do understand that a lot of people use spreadsheets instead of budgeting apps because of this exact issue. But in KeyCast, you're now able to get the feedback from the bank immediately without having to go through a long song and dance to get the bank information into your spreadsheet. So this really automates you that much more and frees up more time than what you would have if you were going in, downloading from your spreadsheet and updating your spreadsheet with your information so that you knew what your actual expenditures were as you continue through the days on the calendar in your spreadsheet. So this makes you a lot more efficient, and it gives you visibility that a budgeting app does not provide. Okay, so at this point, we've added a grocery forecast. This forecast, by the way, can be changed just like these preloaded ones. at any point in time and when you get ready. Okay, so that is forecasting. It's very similar to budgeting, but you have a little more flexibility in that you're not budgeting the amount for the month. You can budget single transactions and make them repetitive. You can budget for a category group, but that group can now be categorized weekly. Hell, it can be categorized daily. But that way you have a little more flexibility in how you spread out your expenditures and or your income into the future so that you can see it on the calendar and its balance effects. Okay. All right. So that concludes forecasting. Now we're going to go over here to reconciliation. Now, reconciliation is the action of making financial accounts consistent. What we're going to discuss is the reconciliation pop-up screen that comes up in KeyCast. We'll discuss what the left side of the screen means and what the right side means. And we will explain to you what the objective is when you're reconciling your accounts. We'll also discuss how it can help you catch unauthorized transactions. All right. So now we'll go back over here to the desktop. And what we're going to do here, let's see. Remember that I started the app on the 13th. That's important. Okay. So on the 13th, when I connected the app, I got started. The app preloaded this information for me with my income and expenses, and I came in and added a weekly grocery forecast to my calendar. And that's what I did the first time I got on the app. It only took me 5 minutes. Okay. So later in the day, on the 13th, I decided to go to Walmart. So I come over here and I type in Walmart and I get my receipt, and I can do this like I just got in the car before I crank up, and I decided to type in the amount that was on the receipt, and it's an expense, and this is for household items, and I choose the frequency. This is just a one-time thing. Now, a lot of budgeting apps don't allow you to enter one-time transactions. And the reason is because of the way they're set up. So you put in a budget by category, and as the days and the months go, what the app does is it connects with your bank, and the bank sends that transaction over. And even in the budgeting apps, it'll allow you to categorize it to what you want it to be. But it takes that item, it takes the amount, throws it into the category that you budgeted, and it'll tell you how much you've spent in that category so far that month. Okay. So in this case, I'm giving this item a category in my forecast, and I can, because I went out and just purchased it. In a budgeting app, all it would do is just wait until after it comes through the bank and tells you, okay, you've used 62 of that household budget that you have budgeted for. Okay. So in this app, it allows you to enter the items as they come through. Now we'll talk a little bit more about how the forecast, if you forecast by category, you can do that in KeyCast. And so we did the forecast, the weekly grocery budget. It was forecasted by category. So we'll show you how that works in KeyCast versus a budgeting app. But in this case, I'm going to go on and put in a household category here, a one-time occurrence, and I'm going to add it. So as you can see right here, it added it on the 13th on my calendar, so I can see it right there. And it started deducting from the balances. Okay. And we do want you to be aware, you do not have to key every single transaction as you make them. What we're doing is making sure you understand that the functionality is there for you to do it. And the reason that it's there for you to do it is because sometimes when money's tight at any given point in time, you need to be aware of what you're spending immediately so you can see the effects to your future balances, because you don't want to go over. You don't want to go into a negative position. I would tell you, if there are situations where you already know that before the next paycheck, you only have X number of dollars, you'll be a little bit more guarded about what you purchase up until that next paycheck. This can be very helpful. Okay. So we want you to be aware that you can key in one-time items. So later on in that afternoon, my wife and I decide to go out and get something to eat, and we go and we buy pizza. Now I could put in the name of the vendor, but it's not absolutely necessary. And I go to buy pizza, and I go and my initial bill was, I'm gonna say $45.01. It is an expense. It's a one-time item, and this is food and beverage. So I'm going to choose that. Okay. Now, I want you to be aware that I also gave a $10 tip, but I'm going to show you how the app can help you if you record it this way. So we'll talk about this in just a minute. So I add that. All right. So now it's affecting my balances as I go. And after we leave the pizza place, I go get some gas at Circle K. All right, and I spend $35. Expense, automotive, once. Okay. Now remember, like I said, you don't have to enter these transactions immediately like I've done here, but just be aware that if this was showing $100 before the next paycheck, I want to be careful how I spend my money in this time frame so that I don't overdraft my account. Okay. So anyway, you enter the information here, and there's another reason why it's good to enter your forecast as they occur, but we'll talk about that in a minute also. Okay. So I've entered that item. Okay. So now I come to the 14th. I'm done with the 13th. Okay. I come to the 14th, and on the 14th, I go out and I need to stop by Lowe's to make a purchase. So I go by Lowe's and I spend $35.62. It's an expenditure, and it's a household also. Okay. Now, later on that afternoon, so after I enter this Lowe's transaction, I come out of the app, and I'm just going to go back to the dashboard right here. So I come out of the app, and later on that afternoon, I get a notification on my phone. Now, granted, this is in-app notifications here, but there's also, it does send phone notifications to your phone in your regular notifications screen. So I see a notification from KeyCast that there's activity on my account. Now remember, we're on the 14th right now, not the 13th, not the first day that I signed up. We're on the afternoon of the 14th. What you have to do in an app and when you're reconciling is, once the previous day is completed at the bank, then you can go in and true up the activity that's on your app to the activity that actually came through at the bank. So I see my notification, I come to the calendar, and I get this pop-up. Tells me there's Recon activity for the 13th. So I continue, and this is where I'm going to explain the reconciliation process to you so you know how to reconcile, because this is important. So at this point, it is indicating to me on this left-hand side of the screen, these are the bank transactions. This single transaction came through the bank on the 14th, and it's one of 4 different transactions that came through the bank on the 13th. I meant to say on May the 13th came through the bank. This is very important. Okay. Now, I can scroll through the screens, but what we want you to know is that on this left-hand side, it's always going to give you one bank transaction per screen. What you see over here on the right is the next 7 days of forecast, because you often don't know the exact day that an item is going to come through the bank. So we let you see 7 days of forecast so that you can try to match that item up. And the goal, what you're after here, is you want to look at this actual item and you want to say, did I forecast for that? If you did forecast for it, you want to match it to the item that it goes with on this side. And the reason is because the app is going to replace the forecasted item, with the bank item that came through. Okay. And the items do not have to match dollar for dollar. Okay. So now we do know I got paid from my company, but I was estimating that I was going to get it Friday. Okay. Over here on Friday. So I scrolled down. And here's my forecasted amount. I knew that it was going to be a little bit more. So I adjusted it, and here's its match. So I select the item over here on the right that matches, and the button switch from add to match, because now it's going to replace. So now I can say here, I'm going to match that item, and that item has now been loaded. And here is a very important point. This item says Great American Cookie. So I described for you things that I did on the 13th, Monday the 13th. Let's see, I went to Walmart, we bought pizza, and I bought gas at Circle K. But I apparently missed loading this Great American Cookie transaction, or this transaction that could have actually occurred on the 12th or the 11th, and wasn't a part of my ending balance on the 12th, but it has now come through the bank. So now I see it. It's going to affect my numbers in the future because I didn't forecast for it. Also note here, I can select it and change this category to, I want it to be food and beverage. So here it is, a food and beverage. And now, because I'm not matching it to a forecast, I know I did not forecast for that. I just add it. And here's another item, Burger King. I'm going to switch it. I like food and beverage to categorize all of my food purchases. So I change it to food and beverage, and I know I did not forecast for it, so I add it. And then here's Sirius XM bill. But if I scroll down, Sirius is an item, and as you can see, they're not exact. Now the app takes me to a netting transaction screen. Now we're going to talk about this real quick because it's very important. Whenever the forecast is more than the amount that came through the bank for the item that you're matching to, the app allows you to net that transaction. In other words, it allows you to say, calculate the difference. And basically it's asking me, do I want to take that difference and put it back on the calendar as a forecast, or do I just want to match them as they are, and this 30-cent difference would now be a pickup in my cash flow, in my balances going forward? Well, in this case, these two just match one for one. I don't want to carry this forward, so I choose close, and all it's going to do is match them and replace the $27 with the $26.70. And basically, when it calculates, I'll get an additional 30 cents back in my stream of cash flow. Okay. Now, this last screen that comes up, this is really important, because what it's saying here is that on the 13th, you had forecasted for this Walmart, the pizza, and the Circle K purchase that you made on the 13th, but they didn't come through the bank. Those were all forecasted. You're still expecting them to come through, so you confirm them because the app is going to take them from the 13th and move them to the 14th. Okay, so let's go and take a look at what has occurred. So right here on the 13th, these 4 items came through the bank. Keep in mind, I forecasted for this one, I forecasted for this one, but these 2 I did not forecast for, and they came through. This is important to understand, because whether you forecast for it or not, it's going to come through the bank. Now, keep in mind that if these had been larger items, they were going to affect my future balances greater. Also notice that when I matched the payroll transaction that came through on the 13th, it removed it from over here on the 18th, because I'm not going to get another paycheck over here on the 18th. It's this one, and I received it. So it took it off of the 18th over here and moved it to the 13th. Same thing happened with my Sirius XM. There was a third Sirius XM bill over here, but it got pulled into the 13th because it actually cleared the bank on the 13th. Okay, this is very important. All right, so now we're going to go through a few more days of activity just to make sure you understand how this reconciliation can be extremely helpful. And understand that now today's balances match what the bank has. So this 3,731 at the end of the 13th, that would be the ending balance for the 13th at the bank. Okay, so now we go to the 15th. So I'm here on the 15th. I make no purchases. Okay, but I get a notification on my phone that there's activity. I made no purchases on the 15th, but I do get an activity notification. So I come in here, and also notice right here, you can access the calendar here or here. So now it's telling me, hey, you got data, you can reconcile the 14th. So come in, and it says, hey, on the 14th, a Verizon bill came through for $320. I scrolled down, and hey, that's the amount that I was notified via text, or got a mailing that my bill this month was going to be $320. Remember, we changed the forecast from 500 to 320. So here it is coming through, and I'm matching it up. Next, here's my Lowe's purchase. Now, this is the Lowe's purchase that came in from the 13th. So it's clearing the bank the next day. So here's my Lowe's purchase. I match it up. And here's my Circle K. Match it up. Now, keep in mind that even in this test scenario, we just discussed the purchases that were made on the 13th and the Recon. When I did the Recon for the 13th, I saw that there were certain items that were being moved to the 14th. That starts to stick in your head. So as the items come through, you start to remember, oh yeah, I forecasted for that. So here's Synchrony Bank. Oh, I forecasted for this credit card payment. Yep, it's there. So this process becomes very simple. So here we are with the situation where these are the forecasted items that are still sitting there on the 14th that did not clear the bank today. These need to be moved to the next day. Okay. And the important thing to realize here is that the app is telling you here, this transaction has already been moved forward one day. Same thing down here. This transaction had been moved forward once already. In other words, just reminding you that it's been moved already. It still hasn't cleared, because there are times where when you review the matching data on the Recon screen, there are times when you may add it and not match it properly, and you keep moving the matched item forward. It's deducting from your balances, but it's not going to come through because you didn't remember or you didn't match it correctly on the day that it posted at the bank. So this is just a reminder for you, because if things start to carry over for 4 or 5 days, then you can start you can ask yourself, did that already come through? And then you can delete that forecast if it did. If you already matched it on posted it on a different day, added it on a prior day, you can come and delete it later, because you just failed to match it on the day that it actually showed up. So the app is showing you here your repetitive items, just so you can see them. Okay. So here I'm going to confirm and move them forward today. And that's important. And then at this point, what I'm doing is I'm just going to keep reconciling, because it's trying to bring me up. Since today is the 18th, it's allowing me to reconcile multiple days in a row all the way up to the 17th. So I just want to continue to take you through that process, and also to show you that you don't have to reconcile every single day, because even if you don't, the app is going to catch you up at whatever point in time you come back into the app. It'll reconcile each of the days individually and bring you up to date. Okay, important. So I'm gonna continue to reconcile. So here, this is where my pizza payment is coming into play. Notice that it's 5501, and if you all remember when I was telling you I paid a $10 tip, so here's where the tip came through. If you had not paid this tip, you did forecast 4501. At this point, you can go back to Giuseppe's and say, hey, this was not authorized. I did not authorize a tip, and I want to know why somebody increased the amount of the charge. Or if this transaction was not authorized at all, you can question it then too. But in this case, we know that it was this pizza purchase, and we're going to match it. And we do want this to replace this, so there will be a $10 reduction in my future balances, because that estimate was not, it was underestimated. Okay. Now, right here, remember, we're on the 16th, we're reconciling the 15th, and here's my first grocery budget, my first grocery purchase this week. And so here we are, and here's where the netting can be very important. So I've spent $137.50 out of my $300 grocery budget. At this point, I do want to put this back on my forecast, because this week I could possibly spend more, and I need this 162 there. So I match, and what the app does is it actually does the calculation. So here's the $137.50 coming through, and here's the balance of the weekly grocery expense left on my forecast. This is how KeyCast handles the budgeting and lets you know what you have left, because you've now netted it down and it leaves you with the $162.50. Now, keep in mind that if let's say all you spend is the $137.50, and it's going to keep moving the $62.50 forward, because it's just a forecast. If no more groceries come through the account coming up here the next week, when you get to the 21st and you get ready to basically allocate the next $300 for the weekly groceries, if you have the additional $162.50, you could add it to this number, or you could just delete the $162.50 line, and it would put that money back into your cash flow, because you know that you're really trying to stay within the $300 a week window. Okay. So now I'm going to refresh so that it will continue this reconciliation, because it is not completed yet. I am allowed to interrupt a recon and come back to it. So right here, it's saying the $62 that was forecasted, it's already been moved forward 2 days, but I'm still expecting it, and it's going to move it over here into the next day. And then here we are on the 16th, and I still have one more day. Nothing came through on the 16th at the bank, and it's going to move to the 17th. And now we're going to reconcile the 17th, and none of that came through. So to move it to the 18th. Now on the 18th, if I had activity that day, it may show me some today's activity, which it does. And so right here on the 18th, I went to the bank for LA Fitness. It was categorized as entertainment. I'm okay with that. Here I had Chevron. I'm going to change this to automotive. And then I'm going to add it. And I had Chick-fil-A restaurants. I don't like restaurants. I use food and beverage. Then I add it. Oh, Walmart purchase right here, groceries. Now, this has 6006. It was 6062. I don't want to carry over that amount. And also notice this Walmart purchase came up as groceries originally, but my forecast had it at household. So when I match it, it took the category of my forecast and overrode over it. So that's good also. All right. Now the success means that all of these prior days have now been reconciled. That's what the check is here. And the check means that on each one of those days you've reconciled it, it balances to the bank. The importance of that to you is, one, these balances are correct and now affect the future balances because everything will be based off of the reconciled totals or the last reconciled total. And once you have reconciled activity on a day, you can't change the value or the vendor, but you do have the ability to edit the category. If you start looking at your reports for the month and you identify that something was categorized incorrectly, you can edit the category so that your reports appropriately show the category spending in each area. Okay. So now at that point, that is reconciliation. Understand that ultimately what's happening is you are tying it to the bank, which is different than budgeting, because in the budgeting process, when you reconcile, basically what you're doing is saying, okay, maybe I overspent on this category. So I go to the other categories where I underspent and move some money around to get everything to show that you spent appropriately. As far as I'm concerned, that type of reconciliation really doesn't tell you much. You need to be able to reconcile to your bank account so that you know exactly what you have and you can see the effects of timing sensitivity relative to your expenses and your income in the future. That's extremely important and what makes this far better than budgeting. Okay, so let's go back. And like we said, we discussed the pop-up screen. We know that the left side is the bank's transaction. We know that the right side are the forecasted items for the next 7 days. And we've discussed what the objective is. Did you forecast for this bank transaction so you can match it? We also talked about the fact that if a bank transaction shows up that you don't recognize because you're going through this reconciliation process, you're finding it much faster than you would if you were only waiting till you get your bank statements or looking at your bank account every now and then. You would find it, basically on a daily basis when you spent the 5 minutes to do your recon. The next, we're going to share some additional resources and tips that can be very helpful. So real quick, we're going to show you a negative balance scenario. let's go back over here to the desktop. Okay, so we don't get paid again until the first of the next month because of the way the bi-weekly checks fall. So we don't get paid until the first of the next month. So ultimately, let's say right here on the 22nd, you have some car damage and you need to get your car worked on. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a transaction where I know I'm going to the charge is going to be more than what I have. So let's do here $2,500. And the type is expense and it's automotive. It's a one-time occurrence. So I'm going to show you this example first. So one, the dealership gives you a quote for the repairs and they tell you $2,500. And you already know based on looking at your calendar, you only got $2,400 in the bank. And so this $2,500 would make you go negative. Okay. All right. Now, you could say, okay, I don't need this grocery budget. We're not going to need to eat food this week. You could say that. Or we have enough groceries to last the next week. Let's just say that. So I come here and I say delete, and I say delete only this one transaction. So that gives me enough money. But if you look here, I'm still short over here. And I think I'm gonna need groceries next week. I may not need groceries this week, but I'm gonna need them next week. And so I'm still short. Okay. So then I can go back to the dealership and say, okay, let's look at your itemized list of things you're gonna repair. And I want to take off several items. I just want to get the primary items taken care of. So I come back in here, and after we take off the unnecessary repairs and just stick with the important stuff, then I come in and I make the change to 1,800 and I say update. Changing it to 1,800, I can now see that before this next paycheck, I'm left with 626. I'm in a much better situation. So I tell them, okay, do those repairs and those repairs on it. Okay. So it's very important to be able to see the future effects of changes to your financial cash flow. And so a budget wouldn't allow you to throw in a $1,800 car repair in the month, because you probably were budgeting some little incremental amount for auto repairs and it didn't include something major like this. So KeyCast allows you to include this major item, see the effects of it, and make decisions today based on what needs to happen. So this is very important. Okay. And we'll flip back over here. Oh, and I do want you to see one other thing here on the dashboard. Let me go back. We'll put the 2,500 back real quick. I should have mentioned that, but let's go back here. We'll put the 2,500 back in there. And what we want you to see here, so I've got negatives over here. If we go back to the dashboard, what we want you to see is that there's a negative balance warning that automatically pops up and warns you about future negatives so that you'll be aware you need to check something in your calendar. Okay. Now, it could be that the future balance negatives are 3 months down the road, so it doesn't affect you. And depending on how you load your income, you could have this situation in KeyCast, and your objective is just to try to make sure you earn the money you need before you get to the 3 month window down the road. Okay. For people that might be realtors that are selling houses, you might have that situation where you sell a house and then you're good for several months because you got that income coming in. But in KeyCast, you can really see how many months that income is going to last you. So it can be extremely helpful. And then you know that If you know that it's going to last you for 4 months, then you do what you need to do. As you get closer to that 4th month, if you haven't had another sale, then you need to be cutting back on expenses to hold on to more money until you do make that next sale. So KeyCast can be extremely helpful in those situations too, and not to mention small businesses. So let's go back real quick. Okay, so we've discussed the negative balance warning and the notification. All right, we're going to show you how to search. So here, we will go to the hourglass, and what I'm going to do here is type in ABC, and what it's going to show you is the activity for my payroll. So these are all of my payroll all the way to 2029, of course. And also, if I want to see only the posted transactions, I can see it there. Or if I only want to see the forecasted transactions, I can see them here. Okay, so there are some different ways, but you don't need the exact spelling, you just need some part of it to do the search. So that can be very helpful. And let's go back. We want you to see the settings menu and the sharing feature. So real quick, I'm going to show you settings menu and the sharing. So here I can access settings here. Be aware that we have a dark mode and a light mode. This is where you would subscribe to notifications for your phones and your different devices. If you have multiple accounts, because we only have one account connected here, but if you had multiple accounts, this allows you to order the accounts so that your most active accounts are at the top, if that's what you want. So you would click and drag on an account and pull it to the position that you want it to show up in the drop-down box. Here's where you can mass edit your categories. You can deselect here to say, I don't want to see the certain default ones, and you can add categories and give them their own icon. Okay, so that's very helpful. You can share KeyCast with other family and friends. What it does is it copies the URL to your desktop or to on your phone copy menu, and then you can go into text or email and then paste it from there. Okay. Now we're going to show you the sharing feature. So if you have a significant other and one of you has a KeyCast account and you're subscribing, you can share that account with another user. That other user is not required to have a KeyCast subscription. They can just sign on to KeyCast, set up a username, and put everything in. You would then come here, put in their username, and it will generate a link that they can then use, and they can put on their phone. They would click that link. It would allow them to get access to that account that you have access to, and then you can restrict them on what they can do within the app. In most cases, you want to allow forecasting at least. Maybe only you're going to reconcile, but they can at least go in and key forecast, which means when they go to the store and buy certain things, they can key it in. And that way, the two of you are both on the same page as to what's being spent and what the balances are in the account going forward. Of course, you want them to be able to view balances. You want them, in most cases, to see the notifications if necessary. And so this feature can be extremely helpful. Now, keep in mind that other person could also have a subscription to KeyCast with their own individual accounts. It's just that this particular account can be shared with them, and they can take other accounts that they have and share them with you. Okay, so that's very, very helpful. All right, and let's return back. So we've taken care of that. Let's go over some closing remarks so you can forecast for one-time items or recurring items. Very important. Forecasts do not have to be exact. Forecasts can be edited or ended at any time. Very, very flexible. You reconcile with your bank account or your credit card account. It's not just banks. So you can do financial accounts that include credit card accounts and all. Items that are not forecasted will be captured. So even if you have your credit card on there and you make a purchase, you don't have to go in immediately load that forecasted item. But when it comes through the credit card account, you'll still have to basically add it because you won't have a forecast there for it, but you'll add it. I will tell you this, on a credit card account, if you forecast all of your purchases, what happens is if a unauthorized purchase comes through, you will see it automatically because it will not have been put in as a forecast. And then when you're scratching your head going, what is this? I didn't make this purchase. Then you can very clearly make the call to the credit card company and within a day, tell them that transaction was unauthorized and they can fix it for you. It's a lot easier to get an unauthorized transaction fixed if you call them the next day rather than 30 days later. Okay. Let's see. Always know your status so you can see ahead and see the cash flow balances in the future. Forced account monitoring, so the review that you have daily when you go in and reconcile, that's extremely helpful, especially in today's identity theft environment. And we give you the ability to link to bank accounts, credit card accounts, and in the future, investment accounts. They're not on there yet, but they will be in the very near future. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Don't forget to download the app from the following URL. We appreciate your participation. Thank you.